We are so delighted that you have chosen to spend some time with us here at Lawrence School. Before we get started, if you are a Lawrence School parent, please raise your hand. Okay, wonderful. If you are curious about things at Lawrence School, find one of those people. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you about their journey, how they got to Lawrence School, and what it has done so far for their children and their family. Tonight, we have an exciting opportunity to talk about something that's very common to our students, and that is executive function, organizing themselves, doing all those things. So if you have a student at home or a student at your place of work that struggles maybe with some organization, please raise your hand. Okay? Good. That one person who didn't raise their hand, that's next week's talk, and that's for the perfect child. All right. But I want to thank you all for coming to Lawrence School. We have some exciting people here. We have staff members who are going to be hanging around if you do have any questions about us. But the most important thing that we have tonight is a wonderful speaker in Dr. Cheryl Chase. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kelly Christian, who is going to tell you all about Dr. Chase.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We are fortunate to have Dr. Chase offer her time to us to unravel the complexities around what is executive functioning and how to address executive functioning weakness. But before I do that, I have 4 items I need to review with you first. The PowerPoint that you will see tonight will also be emailed to you. It's not only out front, but anyone who registered and is not attending us but watching us online, you'll get an email with that PowerPoint. Second, we will be asking at the end of the event that you take a moment to complete our evaluation form. It's important to us to know what you thought about tonight's programming, so please take just a moment to complete those questionnaires and then return it to anyone wearing a name tag or holding a basket at the end of the event. Third, if you're one of our professionals attending the event and you're registered with OPA, pretty please sign your name on our attendance sheet, and we will let OPA know that you're attending tonight. Any other professionals that want to show that you've attended tonight, there's a certificate of attendance on the table right outside the doors over here. And then finally, I would just like to take a moment to recognize the Bicknell Fund for their generous support of our community education initiative. They have been supporting this event for 5 years running, and we appreciate their efforts. So now I would like to introduce to you our speaker, Dr. Cheryl Chase. She's a clinical psychologist in private practice in Independence, Ohio. She's a nationally known speaker who provides workshops and talks on executive functioning, anxiety in the classroom, and dyslexia. In her private practice, she specializes in the diagnostic and neuropsychological evaluation of students who have concerns associated with learning, ADHD, and emotional concerns. She is also the owner and chief content developer of ChasingYourPotential.com. This is a resource devoted to educating those who work with children with unique learning challenges. She, in her spare time, somehow manages to also be an adjunct professor at John Carroll University, as well as her alma mater, Baldwin Wallace. Thank you, Dr. Chase, for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And let's offer her a warm welcome.
Okay. Thank you. That's great. Thanks. And I am also a Lawrence parent. I have 2 children who attend Lawrence, one at the upper and one at the lower, and I'm happy to share my experience. One of the things that I heard in my clinical practice for many years was, boy, once I put my child at Lawrence, I got my child back, got my daughter back or got my son back, and that has absolutely been my experience as well. So funny how the world works sometimes. All right, so thank you all so much for coming and being here and being a part of tonight's program. I think this is a really valuable topic. It's something that I started studying in graduate school and have really gotten to know personally and professionally along the way. And I think one of the things I love most about this topic is it's so broad, and pretty much any condition or disorder that involves struggling with academics or struggling in life, struggling socially, anxiety, depression, whatever, has at its root difficulty with executive functioning. And one time I was giving this talk at the International Dyslexia Association's annual conference, and someone came up to me afterwards and she had tears in her eyes and she said, you know, I came here to try to learn how to help my students, and I'm leaving here knowing how to help my mom. So her mother had been diagnosed with dementia not too long before the meeting, and absolutely executive weaknesses we see with dementia as well. So you may see some of these features in yourself, your spouse, your kids, the families you serve. So executive functions, what are they, why are they important, and how can we help? This is my contact information. Born and raised here in Cleveland. My kids are 5th generation Independence residents, and I'm happy to be home and happy that we have a football team again. I have a Facebook page as well as my own personal Facebook, and I tweet on occasion when I remember to. But I also want to point your attention to the website, as Kelly had said, because there's a lot of free information on there, a lot of prior talks that I've given, thank you, a lot of programs and workshops and things that I've done. And although I think it's very flattering and sweet when people say, oh, you need to write a book, and I just laugh because I say, look, I work with people with dyslexia. I mean, how rude is that? So I make videos. I try to do a lot of different videos, and you'll see they're a little cheesy, but they'll be like a 9-minute video, what are the executive functions, a 8-minute video, what can I do to help my child with executive function weaknesses in the classroom, things like that. So feel free to go on there, and then some other panels I've been a part of right here on this very stage, those are on the website as well. And there are just some, they're called slide books, they might have 2 sentences and a picture. So help yourself, everything's free. All right, so think of a difficult child in your life. Maybe interrupts others, gets out of control easily, struggles to approach large tasks, assignments, or projects, avoids homework, and as a mom, I can attest to this, the creative ways they avoid homework, right? Sliding under the table, the pencil's not the right pencil, that's not how my teacher tells me to do it, this isn't the right paper, I need another eraser, things like that. Fidgety, trouble with routines, too rigid or too loose. So the example I like to use when I'm talking to teachers is maybe the students go to the library every Tuesday, and it's October, and the student is saying, it's Tuesday, we have to go to the library. It's Tuesday, we have to go to the library. And you say, well, you know what, it's Halloween today, so we're going to be taking a little break from library. We're going to do something different today. We're going to shuffle the schedule around. And they're very anxious because they're not going to the library on Tuesday. Or it's May, and you're going to the library on Tuesday, and the student says, the library? I say, yes, we've been going to the library on Tuesdays all school year. So either too rigid or too loose, they haven't picked up on the routines, or the routines are the way it is, and there's no flexibility within that. Room or desk is a mess, like above and beyond what's developmentally appropriate, real mess. Seems unaffected when you give time warnings. So if you say, hey, we've got 5 more minutes, that's not the time to pull out the Legos, it's not the time to begin a new project. Or paralyzed when something unexpected happens, that kind of deer in the headlights when they walk in and there's a substitute teacher, or grandma has to pick them up after school today because mom has a work thing or something like that, and they just get really uncomfortable with it. So any of these and a whole host of other things may be dealing with a child with a delay in the development of the executive functions. So it presents a lot of different ways. The way I want to highlight tonight, we all talk about typically organization, time management, losing papers and things, but also keep in mind that a very strong emotional response, a strong emotional reaction, tearfulness, tantruming, those can easily be symptoms of executive weaknesses as well. So, executive functions. This is an umbrella term for a set of cognitive processes that are required for mental and behavioral self-control. So I love my dog. He's awesome. He's huge. He's a collie. But, when I put food down in front of him, he eats it. He's not thinking, we're probably going to really have dinner in an hour, so I should hold off, or, my coat's getting a little too furry, so I should probably only eat half of the food mom gives me, whatever. He's focused on whatever it is in front of him, and he's not thinking about other goals, other plans, other activities in the future. So these are things that are more human, things that are more focused on long-term goals that involve self-regulation and managing your own behaviors. Dysfunction of the EFs is often seen in children with ADHD, learning disorders, autism spectrum disorders, anxiety, working memory weaknesses, but also lower incidence syndromes as well. So things that I might have seen when I was hospital-based, so certain types of head injuries or certain types of genetic conditions. But we're also seeing now that executive weaknesses can be freestanding. When I first started practicing, the idea was, well, he's got executive weaknesses because of ADHD or because of a head injury. But now we're seeing that a child absent of any other potential diagnosis can also have executive weaknesses freestanding. There's a lot of different models. There are some models that propose 30-some executive functions, some models that have just a handful. And so if you come across an article or you're looking at something online and it's talking about Tom Brown's model or George McCluskey's model, it's okay if you don't fully understand that model. I think of it like if you were going to go to the grocery store and get a bottle of Merlot, right? So there's a whole bunch of different bottles. You generally know they're going to be red. You generally know it's going to be a full-bodied wine. But this one might say oaky and this one might say current undertones or whatever. But the reality is that they're roughly the same in a lot of different ways, and that's the same thing with these models in executive functioning. There are elements of cognition that make us human: self-regulation, self-direction, working towards a larger goal over time. The EFs are known to what they call cue and direct, coordinate the use of other mental capacities. So you'll hear the comparison to an air traffic controller. So the air traffic controller doesn't fly the planes, but the air traffic controller will dictate who should be landing, who should be taking off, the timing, the pace, the rate. Or you'll hear the conductor of the orchestra. So the conductor is not playing an instrument, him or herself, but the conductor is saying, this section I need you louder, this section I need you guys to quiet down, you guys pick up the pace. Meanwhile, I'm going to keep the timing so that we are all coordinated together. So that's what the executive functions do. They oversee what's going on in the rest of the areas of the brain. EF weaknesses are most apparent in situations that require independent and unsupervised work. This is a really important piece because if you want to help a child with a delay in the executive functions, you need to increase supervision and decrease the level of independence you're expecting. I've worked with a lot of kids over the years, and sometimes we all scratch our heads because I'll look at the parent forms that come back, and I'll look at the teacher forms that come back, and it's like I'm looking at the data on two totally different kids. And a mantra of mine is, don't just not be surprised by differences by reporters, expect it. Expect it. I was working with a child a few years ago, and the 8th grade science teacher had this child off the charts in executive problems. All the other teachers were saying, no, she's doing okay. So I called up that teacher. I said, tell me what you're seeing, what's going on. And turns out that entire quarter, the students were working in groups on a project. And so the teacher was there facilitating the group work, but the students were not sitting at a desk, taking notes, filling out papers, and turning in worksheets. They were working in an unsupervised, unstructured way on a group project. And the student looked really, really dysexecutive in that situation, and that makes sense. Self-regulation, self-control. If it's not there, other people need to control me. And if that's not happening, then I'm going to struggle. And the EFs develop over the lifespan, but particularly during childhood and adolescence. No one's really come up with a great developmental timeline yet, you know, the way we had for motor milestones when our kids were little or for language milestones. There's really not a solid, they should be doing this by this age and this by that age. What is normal is very, very broad. So for example, the one executive function I'll be talking about here in a few seconds, normal spans 5 years chronological age on either side of what the child's current age is. So if the child's 10, the normal range is executive skills like a 5-year-old or executive skills like a 15-year-old. So normal is very broad. It is entirely possible, and in fact, that's in part why I am now a Lawrence parent, because the kids may not meet criteria for a specific diagnosis of anything, but you know that they are not thriving in a traditional academic setting, because a traditional academic setting seems to believe that because all these kids were born around the same time, they have the same cognitive skills. And what we know now is that's just not the case. Just because their birthdays happen to be around the same time, development is very, very broad. So I like Russ Barkley's model. And Russ Barkley says that there are activities that one engages in which are self-directed and help the person engage in self-regulation. Okay? If Barkley looks familiar or his name sounds familiar, he's the gentleman who pretty much literally and figuratively wrote the book on ADHD. And so what Barkley says is, as he was developing his idea of how ADHD comes about, what it is, what the cognitive issues are involved with it, it's not just a kid who kind of, is bouncing all over the place. There's a lot going on in the thought process, a lot of impulsivity, a lot of distractibility within the way the brain works. As he was flushing that definition out, he developed his definition of the executive functions. And so if you are thinking, well, my child has executive weaknesses but doesn't have ADHD, okay, that's very possible. Not everybody with executive weaknesses is going to have ADHD. But according to Barkley's model, everybody with ADHD will have executive weaknesses. But you can come about executive weaknesses through other avenues as well. All right, so Barkley has 5, which I really like, because if I don't have to take my socks and shoes off to count how many executive skills there are, I'm happy with that. 5 I can handle. He's got inhibition, self-speech, sensing to the self, emotion, motivation to the self, and then what he calls play or reconstitution to the self. So inhibition, I'll use a picture of a stop sign. Self-speech, I'll use a guy holding a scroll that says rules underneath, a little character. Sensing to the self, I use a mime. Emotion, motivation to the self, I use a dangling carrot. And then play or reconstitution to the self, the picture I use is the lunar landing. And these will make sense as I kind of flesh out what the EFs are. Inhibition. Stop sign. Stopping an ongoing behavior. Like, hey, it's time to come to dinner. So I have to turn off the I'm playing Fortnite activities of the brain. And now I'm going to turn on the it's time to sit at the dinner table and eat dinner with the family part of the brain. This guy. Oops, right? So those of you watching the live stream, sorry, it might be hard for you to see, but obviously this driver was so smitten by the view of the water that he lost focus. And so, to put it in colloquial terms, really being pulled off and attracted to the sexy things in your environment rather than what the task is at hand right now. And, whatever's flashy, whatever's exciting, whatever's got my attention, instead of I'm driving a motor vehicle and I need to keep my eyes on the road. As I said, turning off a set of behaviors and turning on another set of behaviors. So when you hear about the brain, there's this sort of belief that things are localized in the brain, right? So we have this brain, and this is where memory is, or this is where the language center is located. And it sort of gives us this localization model, this idea that within the brain there are certain centers where these things happen. But the reality is that our brains have networks of communication, from lower brain centers to higher brain centers, from the parts of our brain that keep us awake, the parts of our brain that we have common to other members of the animal kingdom, all the way up to the parts of our brain that remember what my grandmother's face looks like, or remember names, or process language. So these networks, I think of them like trains on a track. And if I'm playing a video game or I'm watching YouTube track, the neurons, the neurotransmitters are flowing in this neural network. And just like a train on a track, sometimes it takes a long time for that train to get up to speed, right? So my brain, this set of networks is going like crazy, and then mom calls me for dinner. Well, if you know anything about freight trains, they take a long time to slow down, right? So this thing has to slow down, and the child has to start up a whole other set of neural networks to go do something else. And so for many kids that I work with, while this one set of neurotransmitters and networks is slowing down, the other one needs to start picking up. That transition time can be really uncomfortable. And with teenagers, a lot of times I will see them pop off, be disrespectful, push, shove another kid in the classroom, bark at their parents, drop a curse word, and then all of a sudden now we've got bigger problems because people are yelling and you're not supposed to say that. And ultimately, the child still has not transitioned out of the one activity into the other one. And so inhibition helps shut down that one neural network and then begin the next neural network. And then our buddy Corey. So shutting out all of these distractions and getting that baseball 90 feet between the kneecaps and the armpits as a strike, and hopefully getting it to move a little bit before it crosses the plate. Well, by the way, there are 43,000 people in the stands screaming, yelling, somebody selling peanuts, somebody selling popcorn, guy on second base dancing around trying to get your attention. So there's a lot to shut out while you're staying focused on the one thing you're supposed to be staying focused on. So inhibition is a huge executive function because, according to Berkeley, it sets the table and lays the foundation. Without inhibition, the other executive functions can't happen. So let's put words to it. Inhibiting a dominant response. A dominant response. Did you ever put a birthday cake down in front of a 2-year-old? What's the dominant response? Right, exactly. 242, it's the same response. Fingers in the frosting, right? Fingers in the frosting. And so what we know in neurology is everything in our environment pulls from us a little bit certain behaviors. Pens are for writing. Forks are for putting food in your mouth. Basketballs are for dribbling, right? Bicycles are for riding. And so as we get older, we develop the ability to inhibit doing what the environment's pulling from us. And there are cases of adults who've had certain brain injuries who are released to that dominant behavior. There's a woman who was a nurse who sustained a head injury. When she went for an exam a year later, she goes in the doctor's office. She's a patient right now. She can't help herself but pick up the blood pressure checker. I'm not even going to try to say what that thing's actually called, something sphygmometer or something, and taking people's blood pressure. Or she took the stethoscope and started listening to people's hearts, even though that's not why she was there. And as she was doing it, she was saying, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I just can't help myself. And that's what our kids are like. They lose their inhibition and they start doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. And what I often hear from parents is, oh my gosh, it was so terrible. We were in Walmart and I look and he's like riding the bike. And I'm thinking, we don't ride bikes. And Cheryl is thinking, yes, we do. We do ride bikes. We do bounce balls. We do drive trucks. It's the place and the timing. And so inhibition says now is not the time to be dribbling that basketball in Dick's Sporting Goods. Now is not the time to be riding the bike around Walmart. Bikes are for riding, yes. So inhibiting a dominant response. Often our kids are doing things because the behavior is almost being pulled from them, and they haven't inhibited that yet. Interrupting an ongoing behavior when that's appropriate. So as I was saying, turning off the neural networks from being outside playing and turning on the neural networks for it's time for family dinner. And then protecting the other executive functions from interference, okay? The example I like to use for this one is I have a dining room table at my house. Imagine, now unfortunately my dining room table is 90% of the year covered with stuff that has nothing to do with the process of dining, right? So it's socks. Right now on my table I have clothing for donation. I still have some tax stuff that I have to put away now because I got them done. I have a bunch of orphan socks, and then I have a couple of things I need to give to my brother. And so they're sitting on my dining room table. But Easter is coming up, so on Easter morning, we're probably going to have breakfast at our dining room table. If I clear that table off today, there's a high likelihood that that table is going to be covered back up with clutter, probably by yours truly, before Sunday. And so it's not enough just to clear the space. You have to keep the space clear if you're going to do anything that you want to do on that space. So when I'm talking about inhibition, I'm talking about clearing the table and keeping the table clear. So inhibition also keeps everything else from jumping into the space that you've created. So what does that mean? When we talk about human behavior, I want you to think about stimulus and response, okay? So your child is sitting at a desk at school taking a math test, and an ambulance goes by. And your child, the impulse would be, the automatic dominant response would be, get up and look up, or go out and see what's going on, or look out the window, right? But you ideally want your child to stay focused on the math test and maybe hear the ambulance go by, but not get pulled off task. So ambulance goes by, child gets up and looks out the window. There's no space between stimulus and response. What inhibition does is it wedges its way in there between ambulance goes by and child gets up and looks out the window. It wedges itself in between stimulus and response and then keeps that little space open, that pause. And in that pause is where the other 4 executive functions can happen. So without inhibition, the other 4 executive functions can't happen. So Berkeley talks about inhibition gets in there, wedges itself between stimulus and response, creating a little bit of space so the child can engage those other executive skills. And it keeps that space clean so that all of a sudden the child doesn't say, well, I got to sharpen my pencil because I was pulled off task anyway. I didn't get up and run to the window, but now I'm going to go do something else instead of maintaining working on my math worksheet or test. So how do they say it in the textbooks? The capacity to stop and think before you act, resist the urge to say or do something, and then take time to evaluate a situation and how your behavior might impact it. Wouldn't we love that? That'd be an awesome, awesome skill if our kids could do it consistently. All right, the next executive function, and that's why I have a stop sign for that one, so that's the visual cue. Self-speech, very engaged in reading comprehension. Turns out that when a child is reading, they're reading out loud quietly. So they've done some studies and they've put electrodes on adult healthy readers on their mouths and on their jaw muscles. And they found that when an adult healthy reader, a good reader, is reading to herself, she's actually still moving the micro muscles of her mouth and face. Because reading is very motor heavy. We learn to read out loud. And then we just privatize that. We silence it. We inhibit the vocal cord piece. So self-speech is critical when it comes to reading comprehension. Understanding rules. If I am writing an essay and I'm trying to understand what it is I want to write, I'm having this whole dialogue in my own head. We have a running dialogue when we are solving problems and when we're trying to do something according to a set of rules. We're asking ourselves, am I following those rules? Am I not following those rules? Chess. So my 11-year-old kicks my tail in chess pretty regularly. So for me, chess is still very verbal. I know really good chess players tell me it's all visual. But I'm still saying, okay, which way does the horsey move? Which way does the dude with the ball on his head allowed to go? You know, and I'm asking all these questions, and that's a dialogue. So I'm making sure that I am following the rules before I make a move. And then grammar, composition. So is this a semicolon or a comma moment? Should this be capitalized? Where's my apostrophe go? Things like that. That is all self-speech. So have you guys heard of working memory? Okay, so sometimes my audiences will tell me, yeah, I've heard working memory. How does it fit into all this? So Berkeley says working memory is an executive skill, but he breaks it up into verbal and nonverbal working memory. The best comparison I've ever heard to working memory is it's like a kitchen counter space when you're baking. So I was making a lamb cake the other day, and I pulled out my mixer, and I had my recipe, but I had to stick my recipe kind of in between my teeth, and I'm trying to manipulate all the ingredients and follow the recipe. And my kitchen, just because of clutter, was like baking in a camper. So by the time I got the mixer up, I had to stick the recipe between my teeth. I put the butter on the counter, and then I had nowhere to put the flour, and like, oh, 5 eggs, where am I going to put this carton of eggs? And there wasn't enough space there to manipulate all of the ingredients that I needed. Now, imagine working in a Food Network kitchen. I could have lined up all of my ingredients in sequential order, baking powder or baking soda. What's the difference anyway, right? And I'd have my mixer, and I'd have my recipe up in its little recipe stand. And I could have been able to just reference my recipe as I was going through. Somebody comes in and interrupts me. I can answer the question, go right back to where I was because I have everything lined up. Working memory is like your kitchen counter space when you're baking, but it's the space in your mind that you have to solve problems and to manipulate information. So if I give you a math problem, you're solving that math problem in your mind in working memory. So Berkeley breaks up working memory into verbal working memory and visual spatial working memory, which is the next executive skill I'll get to. Self-speech is this problem-solving, talking to yourself, verbal working memory. So we're going to use our working memory real quick. So solve this problem. You can use paper and pencil. You can look up at it. What do you got? 37. Yep. Okay. Solve this problem, no paper and pencil. What do we got? 36. Now I'm going to read you a problem. 9 times 9 minus 12 plus 17. Go. What do we got? 86. Who had 86? How many of you guys? Okay. How many of you guys didn't even know the third number? Right? Okay, good. Thank you, because that's the example I'm trying to get at. The difference between this and me reading it to you is what we call a decaying stimulus. If you can see it, if you can reference it, if you can go back to it, your working memory has help. If the stimulus decayed as soon as I read it to you, the stimulus is gone, and you can't reference, you can't refresh. So working memory is both storage, which this did for you. You didn't have to repeat the problem over and over again, and then add the new math problem, and then subtract the new number, and then it was up there. So as soon as you did 8 times 9, you could throw that out of your working memory, and you could go on to plus 14. And then you hold on to the product of that, and you throw the numbers out, and then you do the minus 50. But if the stimulus decays and there's nothing except the words that came out of my mouth, you have nothing you can refresh and go back to. So working memory is both storage and manipulation. And that's going to be an important part, because I'll come back to that when I talk about intervention. We don't make them do the storage if we can help it. We do the storage for them. And I'll explain that when we get to the intervention part. So self-speech is also known as verbal working memory. It's using language and words to engage in reflective thought, rule-governed behavior. If I'm trying to follow rules, I'm looking at the behavior that I'm doing, and I'm making sure that I'm following the rules. Did I spell this right? Should I capitalize? Do I need an apostrophe here? Which there, or there am I using? Making and following rules, and then meta rules. So rules about rules. What are things I always seem to forget? I am notorious, Cheryl, I am notorious for going to bed at night and having things pop in my head as I'm falling asleep. And then telling myself in the morning that I'm supposed to make sure I grab a lunch, or make sure that I bring the shopping list because I'm going to hit the grocery store after I work out or whatever. And lo and behold, I'm at working out and I don't have my grocery list. So I've learned, when I think of it, I need to make a note in my phone, or I need to get up and do it right away. That's reflection. That's self-speech. Strongly impacts reading comprehension, morally guided behavior, grammar, math, etc. In fact, Barkley, I saw him not too long ago, and he said, kids with ADHD, for example, they actually don't talk more than other kids without ADHD. They just talk more out loud. The part that suppresses the oral representation of the internal dialogue hasn't developed. And that's actually now how they're showing it in the research and in the brain scans. So kids without ADHD, they have that whole same dialogue going on in their head. It's just not actually passing through the vocal cords. It's the same internal dialogue. So the first one was inhibition. The second one was self-speech. Okay? The third executive function, according to Barkley, is sensing to the self. Sensing to the self. So this is your counter space with pictures and patterns, not your counter space with words. So it's really important when we're thinking in pictures, patterns, three-dimensional space. It's very important in understanding the passage of time. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go into why that is. It's kind of complicated. But the bottom line is Barkley says, kids with executive weaknesses are often blind to time. He says they have time blindness. And he's pretty adamant. He will tell teachers, for example, quit telling kids they have 2 weeks to get this project done, or you only have a month. He goes, you might as well be speaking a different language. They don't understand time. You have to make it concrete, which I'll get to in the intervention portion of the night. Nonverbal communication, nonverbal complex motor sequences are all sensing to the self. Nonverbal complex motor sequences, understanding geography, two-dimensional space, three-dimensional space, knowing what your city looks like, knowing the layout of your house. Those are all elements of sensing to the self. So Barkley also calls it nonverbal working memory, so thinking in pictures and patterns. Imitation of complex behavioral sequences. So a few years back, my daughter and I were watching, if you remember High School Musical. They had the dance version. And so the choreographer from High School Musical would come on and show you the sequence of dances, and then they would roll that portion of the movie, and you could dance along with Zac Efron and whoever else happened to be in that movie, which is totally irrelevant because Zac Efron was in that movie. And so Carissa and I, my daughter who's now 17, she and I were watching. We're all ready to do these dance moves, and we're popping and locking with the best of them, right? And then the show comes on, and it was like I'd never heard this stuff before. And I realized that simply seeing somebody else do something doesn't translate to my body. I play a lot of tennis. I've seen hours of Serena serving, and I cannot serve like Serena. So it hit me like a ton of bricks, simply showing kids how to make letters. Why do we think that that translates into their own little motor output, that they can make the letters? It came in your eyeballs. And I could see in the Denny Ortega, he's the choreographer for High School Musical, I saw that seeing him do it didn't make my body do it. So when we talk about imitation of complex behavioral sequences, so much of what we're teaching kids is, watch me, I'm gonna do it. But I'm a full-grown adult, and I've had years to figure out how to make my body do different things I wanna make it do. Whether it be write my name or whether it be, sequencing different pictures in a game. So we have to understand that for the kids that we serve, especially if they have executive weaknesses, just because they saw someone else do it doesn't mean that they can get their body to do it, especially if it involves motor planning, writing letters, writing their name, writing words. Vicarious learning, same type of thing, watching someone else do it and then expecting you to be able to do it because you saw someone else do it. If you can figure out how to do that, especially in one trial, you're going to be a millionaire. Awareness of time, like I said, time passing, has a lot to do with this sensing to the self. Reciprocal exchange, social cooperation. So if you and someone else are walking towards the door at the same time, and you're kind of picking up on, okay, I'm coming to the door at the same time she's going at the door, so I'm going to slow down a little bit and let her go. And then if we both get to the door at the same time, I'm going to look over and smile and kind of gesture like, you go first kind of thing. That's all sensing to the self. That's all reading the situation, projecting the nonverbals, reading their nonverbals. Those are what we mean by reciprocal exchange and social cooperation. When's a good time to add this element of my story? Is the person listening to me, or are they annoyed with me as I'm telling my story? Hindsight and forethought. So thinking back about things or projecting into the future about things. And so I have a great example of this. My 11-year-old, a couple of years ago, was at home around right after school. And I had a bad habit of starting dinner pretty much as soon as we got home. I'd pick him up every day at 3. And by 3:20, I've got my hands up to my elbows in raw meat because I was making meatloaf for dinner. And Dylan had to do his frequent words, his phrase words. So he reads these lists of words off of the cards, and then I have to initial that he did it. So Dylan said, Mom, can I do my phrase words? I said, yeah, buddy, come on, stand right next to me and do them as I'm doing the meatloaf. And I'm looking and I'm paying attention, and he's doing okay. And then he says, here, Mom, sign my book. And I said, Dylan, I'll sign it when I'm done. Just put it down, I'll sign it when I'm done. And all of a sudden, he's getting upset. And he's getting anxious, and he's getting, but Mom, you have to sign it, and pretty adamant. Let's just say that he was asserting himself to his mother. And it would have been easy at that moment for me to say, dude, what is the problem? Like, just chill, I'll take care of it, I'll get to, or, boy, that kid, he's not getting his way, so he's getting oppositional or whatever. But I said, Dylan, what is the problem? What's going on? And in his mind, I'm going to use words to explain this, but I want you to think of it non-verbally. In his mind, he later told me, he was remembering back last time that Mom said I would sign his book, and I didn't. I forgot. So he got to school the next day. He has to face his teacher. He has a clear memory of what it felt like to tell her, I don't have my book signed, and it's my mom's fault. I did it. It's not my fault. And then he had to stay in from recess because he had to do them in the resource room and have the teacher sign it. So then he was upset because he had plans with his buddies to make a snow fort, and it was something they had been working on. So he's remembering back in an emotional way and in a visual way, and then he's thinking, and therefore, Mom, if you don't sign it now, tomorrow I'm going to have to tell the kids I can't go out to recess, I'm going to have to see the teacher be disappointed with me, and I'm going to have to stay in the resource room and do the phrase words, and I did it already, and this is your fault, Mom. And he's not wrong. So I got it. I understood. And at that moment, thank goodness, it hit me, wash your hands, sign the book, and get back to the meatloaf. But had I not had this experience, and had I not kind of thought it through and asked him, and had he not been able to explain to me what was going on, I never would have understood why my child's having this emotional outburst and appearing irrational, when in reality, he's remembering and he's projecting into the future. So that was a really big teachable moment for me as a mom, to realize how this sensing to the self is pretty powerful and how it plays into that emotional element, the anxiety, the depression, the oppositionality. A lot of it's this. So how do we put words to it? The ability to hold nonverbal information in mind while performing complex tasks. It incorporates the ability to draw on past learning or experience to apply to the current situation, and then project problem solving into the future. So we have inhibition, we have self-speech, we have sensing to the self. The fourth executive skill, according to Berkeley, is emotion and motivation to the self. What fires you up? What gets you going? What motivates you? Why are you here on a beautiful weeknight when you've got, I know, believe me, I'm sure it was a small act of Congress to be able to get the house settled for you to get away tonight, right? Feeding people dinner, homework, and all the other obligations that we have. Writing things down on a checklist, checking them off when you're done. That can motivate you, keep you going. How do you wrap yourself up and package yourself up when you're feeling like this? When you're at that point in your job or your marriage or the health of your parents or the health of your children, where you are so overwhelmed, but life is still holding out expectations on you. How do you persevere? And then these guys. PhD in human behavior, and I cannot figure this out. On so many levels. First of all, running. In this day and age, really, why do you have to run anywhere? Just Uber, Segway, walk. So obviously these people are doing this by choice, I'm assuming, and they're doing some sort of competition, right? Some athlon type of thing that involves swimming in the winter in Speedos, and bikes and running and all these other things. And so oftentimes when someone brings me their child in my private practice, they're saying to me some variation of the following. My kid doesn't think what I think is important is important. My child is not motivated by the things I think he should be motivated by. And it might be something like, he says he wants to play club soccer next year and he wants to try out, but he's not in the backyard kicking the ball around. Or she tells me that she wants to go to college and study medicine, but she hasn't picked up a book to prepare for the SAT. So I hear things like that from parents all the time. And what I find so interesting, and this is my reminder of that, is I have no idea what somebody's running in Speedos is. But I think we all know that once we find that thing, there's almost no stopping us, right? So very often when I'm working with kids, either they haven't had the experience of getting good grades, and so it's frustrating for them to even try to get good grades, or their grades are not what motivate them. Getting an A on a paper or getting a high grade on a math worksheet doesn't make them feel alive. But oftentimes I have to remind educators that we often go into education because we were good at school and we liked it and we liked getting those grades and we liked report card day. We were good at that game called school, but not all the kids that we serve are. And so it's always my reminder that when I'm working with kids, particularly adolescents, I'm always asking myself, all right, what is this guy's running in Speedos? Because I need to make school relevant to him once I know what motivates him. So modifying your internal state to create a new affect, cheering yourself up, calming yourself down. Intrinsic motivation to achieve a future goal. Or said differently, the ability to manage emotions in order to achieve goals, complete tasks, or control and direct behavior. It also includes the capacity or drive to follow through on the completion of a goal and not be put off by other things. So it's really fun to bake, it really stinks to clean up, right? It's really fun to think about starting a scrapbook, and then when it's not as easy as I thought, the stuff just sits on the dining room table for 6 months or something. So we all deal with it, but kids with executive weaknesses or adults with executive weaknesses, my supervisor used to say, they just can't get through the schmutz of life. We all hate it. But for them, it is so incredibly painful. It's like me planking. There's anything else I would rather do than do this thing that I'm doing right now. Yeah, it looks simple. You're just laying around, but it's awful. So it's easy for us to look and say, look, we all struggle with this, but kids with executive weaknesses, that emotional piece is so challenging and so painful. So, sir, what fits your busy schedule better, exercising 1 hour a day or being dead 24 hours a day? Or my personal favorite, I'm going to order a broiled skinless chicken breast, but I want you to bring me lasagna and garlic bread by mistake. Right? So, because I'm not going to send it back, and I'm in a hurry, and I'll just eat it. Fine. But again, this is just my gentle reminder of, Cheryl, you don't always do what you're supposed to be doing either. You know, it's hard. It's hard. By January 3rd, the New Year's resolutions are out the window sometimes because the scale hasn't moved 12 pounds. You know, it's really difficult sometimes to do the things that we don't want to do, even as good, healthy adult executive functioners. And so for our kids especially, I mean, our health depends on this. Your quality of life depends on eating right and exercising. But yet it's so hard to make sure that you're getting it done and fitting it in. And so it's just my reminder that to say to a teenager, well, you should be studying a half an hour every night for the ACT. And they're thinking, the ACT is like 3 whole days away, Mom. You know, I mean, come on. But the reality is that it's hard even for good executive functioners to persist and do things they don't enjoy. So now we're on to the 5th executive function. So we have inhibition, sensing to the self, self-speech, emotion, motivation to the self, and the last one is reconstitution. Reconstitution to the self. So I'm going to open with some pictures like, wow, that's so cool. Somebody carved an apple like a globe. Wow, that's so cool. Somebody had to think of all of that. Everything from characters and storylines and relationships to non-human characters. So we have Wookiees and we have Ewoks. And then we've got different weapons like the lightsabers. Remember growing up and everything was a lightsaber? It was so cool. And you have different forms of transportation, from spaceships to that speeder that went over the sand. And you've got droids and so much going on here. And somebody had to think of all of that. Somebody had to think of all of that. And not just think of it, but tie it all together and make it believable enough. Somebody had to think of all of this. The lunar landing had never been done before. Somebody had to come up with that from scratch. Or these guys. So I like to think about the first blue man going home to his wife. Honey, I've got an idea. So me and Joe and Mike, and she goes, stop right there. The answer is going to be no. And he says, no, listen, hear me out. We're going to shave our heads. We're going to paint our heads blue. We're going to bang on a bunch of pipes. And then when it's over, we're going to shoot toilet paper into the audience. And she says, no. And he says, oh, by the way, I quit my job today, and I got a second mortgage on the house for the pipes. I know it sounds ludicrous, but yet there are Blue Men Group all over the country now. And so reconstitution, Barkley also calls it play. It's this creative, novel problem solving. But if you look at the word reconstitute, it talks about, it's really building it up again from individual parts. And so Barkley says that problem solving at the end of the day is breaking the problem down into individual parts and then figuring out how you're going to put those parts together. So the example I'd like to use is if your child comes home and says, oh gosh, Mom, I'm supposed to do problems in my math book, but I forgot my math book at school, so I can't do my homework. And we're on it, right? We're like, call a friend, go online. Is your book online? Let's see if Susie can take a screenshot of or a photo of the book and just send you the problems. Let's run back up to school. Let me get you to school early tomorrow. Let's teleport back. And we've got all the solutions, right? And our kids look at us and go, well, I can't do my homework now. You really can. We just have to figure out, we have to isolate what the problem is. What is it that you need? You need those 5 problems somehow communicated to you, and you can do the rest on scrap paper. We can figure that out, right? So reconstitution, Barkley says this is how adults play. That we generate multiple options towards a goal. Think about pulling dinner together, right? Sometimes you just walk in the door, you're like, well, I got a loaf of bread, I got some cheese, and I think I got some butter. Grilled cheese tonight. Right? You didn't go in with a plan. You haven't been thinking about it for 4 weeks. You just walked in and said, do I have a starch? Do I have a protein? Do I have a fat? What can I pull together? But it's not just enough to pull stuff together. It has to be goal-oriented. and it has to achieve a certain goal. So creativity for the sake of creativity may be fine, but that's not the executive skill. The executive skill is creativity and problem solving that meets a goal. Goal-directed innovation, verbal and nonverbal fluency. So generating diversity. The way I can test for this in my office is I can say something like, tell me all the things that you can think of that are sports equipment. Go. And you just see what the child comes up with. And if all they say is a baseball, a volleyball, a football, shoes, and there's your whole minute, you see that that wellspring of creative ideas and problem solving is limited. But some kids are able to say a hockey mask, a catcher's mask, shoulder pads for football. You know, they can come up with some pretty creative answers. And that's how you're getting an idea of that wellspring of ideas and problem solving, where it's at. Rapid assembling of complex hierarchical goal-directed actions. That's how the books say it. But the bottom line is, think about writing an essay. I have to pull together my ideas while also making sure I'm using proper grammar, while also making sure that I'm capitalizing and punctuating the way I need to, while also making sure that I'm spelling properly, while also making sure that I'm answering the question the essay is asking me, while also making sure that I'm going into my long-term memory and pulling out the right names, Jefferson, Adams, and all the other things. And so all of those things being pulled together and put together into a novel new essay, that's an example of reconstitution. So how did the book say it? Coming up with novel ideas, revising plans in the face of obstacles or new information, and then adapting to changing conditions. I love my mother. She was a wonderful person. We lost her about 12 years ago. But I used to tease her, like, thanks so much, Mom, for you and your sisters fighting so hard so that I could have the right to work. Because all this still has to get done, right? The kids have to have their lunches for school, and the carpools have to be made, and the brownies have to be baked for the bake sale and all those other things. So our running joke was, well, here you go. So at your home office, with one side is your oven and the other side is your dryer, and you're all good to go. Reconstitution, novel problem solving, coming up with new ways to address problems. So inhibition, sensing to the self, self-speech, emotion, motivation to the self, and play. And those are the pictures that I like to associate with them each. All right, so what do we do about it? What do we do about it? The key in my years of studying this, speaking about it, and understanding it, rely solely on balance and compassion. Balance and compassion. The reason I spend the bulk of my speaking time on executive functioning, talking about what they are, is because I need you all to believe it. The biggest hurdle that I have in addressing executive function weaknesses is resistance to this being even a thing. That, oh, this is just immaturity, or he's just being oppositional, or he's just working you over, or whatever. The reality is, it's there, it exists. The research shows it, the neurology shows it, executive weaknesses exist. And you have to balance the needs of today with the needs of the future. Yes, he might not be able to do something today. We need him to do it in 10 years. We've got 10 years. So over the years, I've kind of boiled down all the books and articles and everything to what I think are the top 8 things you need to be focusing on. Number 1, keep a disability perspective. Keep a disability perspective. Imagine me walking up to this little girl in a wheelchair and saying, sweetie, get up. Run a mile. I mean, everybody else in your class can do it. Every other kids younger than you can do this. Get up. We've read books about running a mile. We did a diorama on running a mile. Your little brother, 5 years younger than you, can run a mile. Get up. I mean, that'd be foolish, right? It would be insensitive. It would be, I mean, she's got a disability. It's obvious. The requisite physiology to do what I'm asking her to do is not there. But it's the same argument. The requisite physiology to do what I'm expecting of you is not there. The brain has not developed that yet. It'd be like asking a 9-month-old to walk. You're not there yet. You look like you should be able to, and other people your age can. You can't. Okay, remember potty training? Remember when your kids were little and you were looking at how many teeth have come in yet, and you're hearing about all these other people with teeth, and you're like, great, my kid's never going to college because he doesn't have a tooth yet. Right? This panic over these things they're supposed to be doing and they're just not doing yet. Kids with executive weaknesses don't have the brain development quite the same way yet. So you want to change your lenses, and you want to buy into this disability perspective and believe that if I cannot change my child, and I've tried telling him, and I've tried coaxing him, and I've tried disciplining him, and I've tried punishing him, and it's not changing anything yet, maybe the expectations are what need to change. Maybe the environment is what needs to change. Blaming, preaching, shaming, they don't work. I love this one. He gets it right once and he pays for it the rest of his life, right? So sometimes our kids are really, really good at organizing their baseball cards, are really, really good at keeping their toy soldiers clean and organized, but yet their backpack looks like a small bomb went off in there. So yes, if it's something they're highly motivated and interested in, they're going to be particularly good at it, but you know what? There's more of the brain engaged. When there's positive affect involved in doing what I'm doing, I do more of it, I persist longer, and I'm better at it. When I'm doing something I don't want to do, I have a lot of negative emotion. I don't have as much neurotransmitter going on, and I just want to get this over with, planking. And so there's less of my brain devoted to it. That is human nature. We're all that way. Kids with executive weaknesses, even more so. So what do we want to do? Set realistic expectations. I write this in my reports. Tommy will need more support for a longer period of time than his age mates. More support for a longer period of time. And this is an old expression from psychology. Stop shoulding on them. Yes, you should be able to run a mile, honey, but okay, you can't. Instead of what we call admiring the problem and reminding her over and over again that she's not doing what she should be doing, maybe we just need to change the environment. The EFs require time to evolve, develop, and mature. A quick fix is usually not possible. Lessons will need to be repeated, and the gains that they make appear gradually. And just remember, compassion and willingness to make accommodations is vital. And I think that this is really important. Sometimes, and this is one of the reasons that I really went ahead and did the website that I have, because I'll see families where maybe mom will come to hear me speak, and she says, I'm with you. I get it. I'm on it. But when I go home, he's going to have no interest in doing these accommodations that I'm talking about, meaning the husband or the child himself. Or I've had teachers come and say, I get it, but my co-teacher or the administrator or next year's teacher isn't going to do these things. And so everybody involved in this child's life needs to have that disability perspective and be willing to provide these accommodations. Because when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment, not the flower. Makes perfect sense. Oh, yeah, need a little more fertilizer. Oh, got to put it in the light. But with our kids, we're like, what's wrong with you, right? So think about the environment. Number 2, balance the needs of today with the needs of tomorrow, now and the future. Take a dual approach and strike a balance between today and the future. Keep the big picture in mind. Accommodate the EF weakness while also helping the student develop the skill needed. So throughout my talk, I tell one story about each of my 3 kids, and they know it. They've been okay with it. Now you get to hear the story about my oldest. So Bryce, my oldest, is almost 20. And he was getting ready for kindergarten. He was my first. And so back in July of that school year, I had ordered him his little Docker pants and his little pullover shirt because he was going to go to a private school, and he had his polo and his Dockers. So first day of school comes, and I get him dressed in the morning and put him on the bus, and he goes off to school, and I'm so excited for him, his first day of big boy school. And he gets off the bus at the end of the day, and I say, hey, buddy, how was your day? How did it all go? And he was mad. He was angry, angry, angry. And I said, what happened? And he goes, my teacher had to take my pants off. And I said, what? And he said, she had to unbutton my pants for me. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I couldn't do my button. And I went, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I just bought all these pants, put them on you. Apparently, I have not been having you do buttons on your own. Didn't even realize that I was putting his little pants on for him. So that night, we ran to the store. We got some snaps that he could do. I took the buttons out, and I sewed the snaps on a couple pairs of pants, sent him off to school the next day. So the need of today was my son needs to be able to master removing his own pants at school because they had different activities. They swam, they had gym class, and to use the bathroom. So the needs of today were important. He had to be able to remove the button, unbutton his pants himself. But does that mean that I fully expect that when my son is 30, he's not going to be able to button his own pants, and so he's going to bring me his pants and say, here you go, Mom. So on the snaps, I'll be back on Tuesday. No, of course not. I don't remove the expectation that he'll ever get there, but he's just not there now. And by the way, he can now button and unbutton his pants on his own independently. He made it. Kudos. Thank God, because I was not driving to college every day. So you balance the needs of today with the needs of the future. Eventually, they will get there. But how do you not give up hope? You practice. So you accommodate when stakes are high, and you practice when stakes are low. The practice took the form of, let's go to Build-A-Bear. Let's get Army PJs for your little Build-A-Bear, which have buttons all over them. Let's get Bryce some PJs for bed at night that matches Build-A-Bear with buttons all over them. Let's run back to that same fabric store. You can pick out a piece of fabric, and you can pick out some buttons, and we'll sew the buttons onto the fabric, and you're going to be buttoning and playing button games every night. You're going to be wearing buttons on your pants and your shirt when we go to church on Sunday or when we have family dinner. So my son ended up buttoning more than other kids his age because he needed the practice. But not at school. The stakes were way too high. So you accommodate when stakes are high, and you practice when stakes are low. And it's okay if they're not successful. Does that make sense? Okay. So you're asking yourself, what are the key components of this task? So for my son, it was important that he could button his pants. I didn't care if they were snaps. I didn't care if they were Velcro. I didn't care if they were pull-ups. But let's talk about something like gym class. Why do we have gym class at school? And I've heard people say, it's important to teach teamwork. It's important because we have physical activity. It's important because we want kids to learn different games and different activities. Those are all great. But no one has ever answered when I say, why do we have gym class at school? No one's ever said to me, because we're trying to teach our children to remember random things on random days. But yet the number one reason that kids have to sit out of gym class is because they don't have their shoes or they don't have their gym uniform. So if that's the barrier to these kids getting the thing that they need, which is physical activity, learning teamwork, exposure to different sports and different activities, why are we holding them out, especially kids with executive weaknesses who need to move their body? And so somewhere like this school right here, Lawrence, the kids come to school in their tennis shoes every day. They have a uniform, but they're allowed to also wear tennis shoes. They can leave a pair of tennis shoes here. And then they just wheel in a big tub. The kids grab a shirt and a pair of shorts. They throw them on. They go do their gym class. When gym class is over, they take those clothes off, throw them back in the tub. The school launders them. The kids are all participating in gym class. So there are workarounds. There are workarounds for forgetting your textbook. You have two sets of textbooks. One stays at home, one stays at school. It's a matter of giving up the resistance to the accommodation. So my youngest, he leaves a coat at school. Because I can tell you, and it's partly because I do the same thing, we walk out of the house into the attached garage, get in the car, and go to school. How many times would he have had to sit in recess because he didn't have a coat? So sometimes, yes, in Cleveland, Ohio, in January, we go to school without a coat sometimes. Dylan, my 11-year-old, said, I'm going to leave a coat at school. I said, brilliant idea. Simple solution, and there we go. Work around it. All right, number 3, decrease cognitive load, cut down on active processing. So there's 2 ways I want to explain this. Everything that we do cognitively is a huge juggle. So just think long division, right? There's a lot going on when you're doing long division. So what do? Number 1, we want to externalize everything. Let's go back to what I talked about with working memory. You have storage component and manipulation component. I read you off a math problem. You have to store it. You have to repeat it over and over again, while you're also trying to do the math part of it. If we externalize times tables, if I put the problem up for you to see visually, you don't have to devote kitchen counter space to repeating over and over again. All you have to do is manipulate. So if you externalize important information, frequently misspelled words, capitalization, punctuation reminders, times tables, you're allowing more of the brain to be free to do the processing and less of the brain to be free to do the repeating over and over again. So time, make time concrete. This is called the time timer. This red will get smaller as we get closer to time running out. It makes time concrete and visual. Externalize information like frequently misspelled words, times tables, even steps to clean your room. So there are things online all over the place. You can just print them off, or you can even, you can buy them, I suppose. But how do I clean my room? Honey, go clean your room. Oh, my word, right? It's like asking me to clean the garage. I look and I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know where to start. Half the stuff isn't even mine. I don't even know what most of it does. But if you just give me a list, I can follow a list. So here's a list for cleaning your room. Here's a list for cleaning the bathroom. So we can externalize things. So rather than having the child have to hold this information in mind and make these constant decisions, we're helping the working memory. Part B of this juggling and reducing cognitive load is avoid simultaneous processing. So manipulatives don't decay. When I showed you the problem, you could look back at it all you wanted. When I just read the problem, if you didn't catch it the first time I said it, you don't get to do the math problem. Manipulatives don't decay. They have things they can keep going back to and refreshing that storage part of working memory. Break tasks down into individual steps. What if your GPS gave you all the directions to get home right when you got in the car? That would be a huge problem. You need it doled out when you're ready for it, step by step. Separate note-taking from listening comprehension. I do this when I teach at the college level. Don't pass out papers while giving directions. Or if you want your child to remember something important, don't do it while you're also passing around food at the dinner table, for example. That's a great time to say, how was your day or what was going on? But if they aren't listening, it may be because they're passing food around the table or they're thinking about whether they want any mashed potatoes or not. So one thing at a time. Alphabetizing spelling words, for example. With my daughter, I had to have a strip of the alphabet. She knew the alphabet, and she knew how to read her words. But when she had to alphabetize spelling words, and those spelling words had 3 or 4 of those words that started with the same letter, then we were derailed. When she had a letter strip in front of her, she was much more able to look up and instead of repeating the whole alphabet to herself, okay, which one comes first, E or L? Looks like E, okay, and that's it, instead of saying the whole alphabet. Long division, have times tables available. Templates, rubrics, all of those things are helpful. Teachers use them to teach students and allow them to keep using them. I'm going to skip over that for time. So what do we want to do? We want to keep oral instructions short and simple. So don't talk too long with too many parenthetical phrases and too broad a vocabulary. If you want your child to do things, make it simple, keep your language short, and make it visual if you can. Write down with picture lists. Keep whatever it is you're telling them brief. Allow them time to process and practice and rehearse what you said. I remember one time my mom saying to me, "Are you mocking me?" Because I was repeating with my lips what she was telling me to do. And I said, "No, I'm just listening." It never occurred to me that she would think I was being disrespectful because I was just saying, like, go up to your room, put your clothes on. I'm like, go up to your room, put your clothes on. Because to me, I was just telling myself what to do. And we need to teach our kids. Repeat after me. Say it again. Let me hear what you heard me say. Do one task at a time. Try to keep the environment quiet, especially during homework time. Avoid non-essential, irrelevant, or confusing information. So if you want her to clean her room, now is not also the time to tell her, by the way, you have an orthodontist tomorrow morning, so we're going to be late to school. Right? Clean your room, and then when you're done, come back and we'll talk about the orthodontist appointment. Present steps just before they're needed. Again, like your GPS. You're going to be turning in 500 feet, 300 feet, and so on. Present both visually and orally. And then use visually oriented instruction. Use visuals presented by teachers or have kids visualize it themselves. So if you're telling your child you want her to go upstairs and do 3 things, you don't necessarily have to give her a Picasso and say, these are the 3 things I want you to do. Look at the lovely artwork I've done. You can say, close your eyes, picture yourself putting your clean clothes away. Do you see it? Do you see yourself putting your clean clothes away? Okay. Put your dirty clothes in the hamper. Close your eyes. Do you see it? Do you see yourself putting your dirty clothes in the hamper? And then make your bed. Close your eyes and picture it. Do you see it? Do you see yourself making your bed? Okay, honey, what were the 3 things I asked you to do? You can make it that simple. You don't have to do all these picture lists, but picture lists help. So number 4, intervene at the point of performance. Intervene at the point of performance. Cueing and prompting must happen in vivo, at the place and at the time the skill is to be demonstrated. What does that mean? Do you ever go to the bathroom in, I don't know, Red Lobster, and in the bathroom on the wall it says employees must wash hands before returning to work, right? As gross as it is to see that sign, I'm so grateful it's there, but it's like, why can't you just put that back in the break room or put that back in the kitchen? Because the reminder needs to be at the point of performance. So if we want our kids to hang their laundry or hang their clothes up when they get home from school, the note has to be potentially in the, wherever the room is that they come into. So at our house, we call it the mud room or the shoe room. So when they come in the shoe room, step one, go upstairs and put your clothes back on the hanger. And then when they get upstairs, on their closet, put your clothes back on the hanger. The reminders have to come at the point of performance. It's not enough just to say, oh, hey, make sure after school you remember to put your shoes under the bench in the cubby. In the shoe room, under the cubby, boy, I'm getting really personal, but at my house we have a shoe room with a cubby. And so they have to sit on the bench and their shoes have to go underneath in the cubbies. And so the reminder is there, shoes in the cubby, at the point of performance. And so one time, this is my daughter's story, so one time Carissa was laying in her bed and she goes, Mom, I just remembered I'm supposed to have a disposable lunch for school tomorrow. We have a field trip and it has to be all disposable. And I said, oh gosh, honey, that's right. I remember getting an email about that a couple weeks ago, but again, not at the point of performance. It was so far in the future, I totally forgot about it. I'll just get to it in the morning. And she says, how do you do that? And I said, what? She goes, how do you tell yourself to do something in the morning and then actually remember to do it in the morning? And I said, well, that's a really good question. How do I remember to remember something? And she said, yeah. And I said, I don't really know, honey. It just kind of pops up. And just out of nowhere, she goes, I would burn every piece of toast if I was a toaster. It would just never pop up for me. She said, and I just went, that's hysterical. That was, to me, the best example. I said, I don't know how I remember to remember. It just occurs to me. I'm blessed. Teaching the skill is inadequate. It's not that kids with executive weaknesses, in many cases, it's not that they don't know what to do. They don't do what they know when they're supposed to do it. So they'll come in the classroom and not put their homework in the front basket, which has been the routine since September, right? And the teacher says, how did you not turn your homework in? Where's the homework supposed to go? I'm supposed to come in and put the homework right in the basket as soon as I walk in the classroom. Yes. Yes, you are. Why didn't you? I don't know. So it's not doing it's not knowing what to do. It's not doing what you know at the point of performance. And so if you want the toilet seat put down, where do you put the reminder? Right? At the point of performance. Number 5, keep anxiety and stress low. Keep anxiety and stress low. So our ability to engage our executive skills goes down as the amount of fear, stress, and frustration we're experiencing goes up. So what does that mean? So our brain has sort of 2 big divisions. It's got the lower brain centers and then the higher brain centers. The lower brain centers are the parts of our brain that we have in common with many other members of the animal kingdom. Things that are responsible for, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I want to procreate, I am awake, I'm asleep. Things that are responsible for respiration, for breathing, for pupil dilation, things that, as animals, it's important that we do. Then on top of that, in us humans, we have all this other stuff. And all this other stuff is responsible for more human stuff. So thinking, planning, language, reasoning, long-term memories, and things like that. But we are animals, and we are, at our core, trying to survive. And so our brain comes with this hardwired mechanism. You heard it called fight or flight, right? Fight, flight, or now they talk about freeze, fight, flight, or freeze. But the lower brain centers have a very important job. And when we are under stress or we feel threatened in some way, the lower brain centers take control. And they're saying, what's the next threat? Is it important? Should I run? Should I fight? Should my heart rate increase? Should my heart rate decrease? My pupils should dilate so I can take in more of the visual field. So our brain goes into survival mode, but it does so at a cost. The higher brain centers get less fuel at that point. So when our brain is stressed out, the lower brain centers are at the wheel, and the higher brain centers, which is where the executive skills lie, don't get as much of the resources available. So we shift into animal survival mode. The problem is that we don't know what's going to trip fight or flight in any given individual. So unfortunately, that's a great system if you're being chased by a tiger on the savannah. Not such a great system if you're running 10 minutes late for a meeting, but you get there and you're still in the same kind of fight or flight that you would have been in if a bear was chasing you on your drive into work. And so for our kids, if they get teased during lunch, or the boy that you were hoping asks you to prom asks somebody else, or you got a C on your test when you thought you were going to do better than that, those things can trip the lower brain centers. And solve for X, how do you spell onomatopoeia? Those are not so important to me right now. And even if I'm believing they should be important to me, my brain is not capable right now because the higher brain centers are not getting as much oxygen and fuel. And so I want to stress again that we don't necessarily know what is stressful for our kids. So we're sometimes expecting executive skills from a person that's just not brain ready to exhibit them. But the other problem with kids with EF weaknesses, it's a double whammy. Kids with EF weaknesses have a particularly hard time reining in their emotions. Remember the running in Speedos? Remember the inhibition, one track getting to another track? So when their emotions are triggered, they're more likely to engage in maladaptive coping strategies, shutting down, disrupting, walking out, yelling, swearing. And so not only have they sort of tried to function in an environment with their frontal lobes tied behind their backs, the parts of the brain that really mediate the executive skills, they're also more likely to pop off and do something maladaptive when they do get upset. So it is a double whammy. It is a double whammy. So the more calm we can keep the environment and the more calmly we can approach them, emotions are very contagious. The calmer I can be, the better executive functioners the people around me are. Number 6, deliberately and explicitly teach new things. EF weaknesses do impact the way that we learn information. Our executive skills are heavily engaged when we're learning something new or when we're in a new situation. There's a lot to process, a lot of impulse control, a lot of problem solving, a lot of self-monitoring, a lot of adapting. Remember learning to drive? And how it seemed like I am never going to get all this? I remember trying to put the car in reverse and my dad kind of snickering as I'm trying to put my car in reverse. And I'm like, Dad, I think I broke the car. He said, no, honey, you have to put your foot on the brake. I went, oh, yeah, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to get this. Or pulling in the driveway and taking the key out of the car, but I never put it in park. And he's like, nope, got to put it in park. Thank God he was a good executive functioner and calm because I was panicking. But now, after you've learned how to drive and you've been driving and it's become fluent and automatic, your brain's free to do other things, right? So you've planned your trip to Bermuda someday when you retire while you're driving home from work and you realize, I was supposed to get off 2 exits ago because I'm supposed to stop at my mom's or go to the grocery store or get the dry cleaning or something, right? Or you get to your destination, you think, did I even stop at that stop sign at the top of my street? Right? You don't remember this stuff. But any skill that we're learning is that way. It's very executive function heavy as we're learning. Then once we have it, we're golden. Once mastered to the point of fluency, the EF demands associated with it decrease. Number 7, foster a strategies are smart culture. Strategies are smart culture. Using rubrics, using reminders, using hints, that is the smart thing to do. Smart people use strategies. It is not cheating. Could you imagine life without a planner, life without your phone? How do you keep your web passwords and your usernames? And I know that you have a different password for every website that you're on, right? I know you do. And mine are totally not in my phone. So strategies are smart. And so some of the experts out there will say, tell kids, share your strategies. Talk to them about what you do as parents. What do I do? What helps me? My son in college will still call me, Mom, I've got to remember the 9 something something somethings. Can you help me make up a silly sentence? Sure, honey, we can do that. That's easy. Of all the things you're going to call me and ask me for from college, that's an easy one. So in your handout, I won't go through it, but there's some examples. Crazy phrases, acronyms, cartoons, something called the triple note tote. So you might have terms, definitions, and some kind of drawing or picture, way that you're going to remember it. The STAR strategy, so what was the main idea of the article I read? Who was involved, how, why, when, where, and what? So these are different strategies, and I will point out to you the book that I got them from because they're in your references. But there are different strategies to use. They have to be personal. You can't, I mean, Roy G. Biv is one example, but the more personal the kids can make these phrases and these strategies, the better. They do the drawings. They make up the crazy phrases. They make up the acronyms. And I have a whole list. There's a book that has a bunch of those sorts of things. And then number 8, don't be too quick to pull supports because of progress. Don't be too quick to pull supports because of progress. Unfortunately, the way our system works, the way the public school system works, is generally if a child has a good year, they lose their IEP or their 504 plan. And without those supports, they often fall right back into the executive weaknesses that got them their plan in the first place. But you need to think of this like a diabetes insulin model. So Susie takes her insulin. Susie's blood sugar numbers are really good. Susie doesn't need insulin anymore. Congratulations. Oh, no, 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 no. Susie will still need insulin, and she will need it tomorrow. She may not even need the same dose. She may not even need it tomorrow, but she'll need it the next day. It depends. There's a lot of variables involved in what kind of insulin you need, how much insulin you need, when you need it, when you don't. But simply having a good number doesn't mean you don't need it anymore. It's a constant ongoing. The supports are allowing the success. Phase it out slowly and deliberately, but be prepared to put it back in place with short notice. So this book by Lynn Meltzer has lots of these strategies I was just describing for you. She also has an online program that you can go to. Some of it you have to pay for. A lot of it is free. And if you just look up Lynn Meltzer, and then it's a SMARTS, the SMARTS program. She's got a lot of those cutesy strategies and things like that. Executive Function in the Classroom by Chris Kaufman is another very good one if you're looking for academic interventions. Smart But Scattered and then Smart But Scattered for Teens are great parent-driven books, things that you could do and that you may benefit from doing at home. If you're talking specifically about working memory, Helping Students Remember is a great book with different working memory activities and exercises. Improving Working Memory and the Working Memory Advantage are a couple more books about working memory. But the reality is, guys, there's no easy answer. There is no easy answer. People ask me all the time, come up with a system, come up with a program, give us something we can photocopy with a cute name and hand out to our students. Nope. But if we do nothing, the secondary problems are significant. We want to instill hope. We want to set realistic goals and have adequate supports. And we want to have humor, flexibility, and acceptance because it is what it is. All right. Questions. We have a special question cube here.
At what age are you concerned about executive functions maybe not having some problems in school?
Sure. So at what age do I start to think executive functioning may be sort of having an impact on academics? The first thing always boils down to, is there a functional impact? So are there expectations being placed on the child that he or she isn't meeting? What we know from the way academics works is we usually don't expect a whole lot of independent executive functioning until maybe 3rd or 4th or 5th grade. But I will tell you that in 2nd grade, my daughter's teacher came to me and said, "Oh, I'm worried about her, honey." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "We are doing projects independently at their desks, and they're pasting these." It was this marine museum, so they're putting, they have each research one marine life and just put a couple pictures up on the board. She said, "As soon as I walk away, your daughter's off on a different task." So it may present itself very early by inhibition problems or sustained attention problems, so not staying on task. But it may also be that those early grades were fine, but in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, when it was time to do projects or it was time to manage packing up your backpack and coming home and then getting everything back in your backpack and getting it to school, that's where the executive weaknesses come. So you'll see, if it's inhibition, you'll see it very young. If it's some of the other executive skills, it may be high school, college, or even a little bit older. It just depends on when the environment is expecting them.
Any research about the impact of technology, screen time on executive functioning challenges?
Assuming that screen time means less executive functions?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there research on executive functioning and technology/screen time? Not that I've seen. It may be out there. I haven't seen it. I'm more focused on what do we do about it than so much how are we getting to where we are now. And I think technology is a massive asset to kids with executive weaknesses. And in fact, one of the handouts that they provided for you are different apps and tools and things that help with executive functioning. But I think across the board, we are seeing difficulties with a lot of things like social skills, like imaginative play, like creative problem solving from too much screen time. So I think too much screen time is a problem, but I don't think it specifically targets executive functioning delays. But technology can be a massive tool for dyslexia, for executive functioning. I mean, I tell my college-age son all the time, get your phone out, let's use your phone, let's put something in there, let's put reminders in there, let's use technology can be really helpful. Yeah.
Oh, hello. So my question's regarding my about to turn 11-year-old who I've had assessed. We're not at Lawrence School, but I've been slightly frightened in particular by the report that came back from educational psychologist assessment, which stated that he had probably a 3-year, minimum 3, possibly 5-year gap in social emotional. So he's coming to the end of 5th grade, he's about to go into middle school, and they're saying socially and emotionally he's 3 years behind.
Okay.
What should we be focusing on?
I would have to know a little bit more about what the other data look like, but my first thought would be that I would focus on some coping skills for, is there anxiety?
There is a little.
Okay. Depression?
No.
So the social emotional, is it mostly the social part?
Well, he's got the ability to make friends. He's got lots of great friends. He's ADHD, which we know, and he's on medication.
Okay.
Which
so
is
maybe impulsivity?
Massively helping. So the impulsivity is massively reduced.
Okay.
But there have been random occasions when he'll just go AWOL. He'll go off to the bathroom and not come back. Or he'll lie about going to PE and not turn up. And the school are growing more greatly concerned that he will have the inability to be as independent as his peers when it goes to middle school, when it's required.
So it sounds to me like what I would be recommending is that you find someone to help you put in a plan in place to improve impulse control. That would be my first starting place. Now, if it's social emotional, impulse control is a little bit different than that. My thinking is that the impulse control difficulties are making it hard for him to be invited into a friend group and play because he might be taking over or interjecting his thoughts when it's not his turn, things like that. So I would start working on the impulse control first. And even Barkley would say that none of the other executive skills can take root until the inhibition is managed. So the medication is helping, but now we also, so it's the sort of talk that I give on this is skills, not just pills. So now that he's got some impulse control, now that there's a little gap between stimulus and response because of the medication, what can he do in that gap? So improving self-speech will help decrease the impulsivity as well.
Thank you.
So what do you do with a teenager who, because of all of the symptomology and everything else, and personality, won't buy into the fact that this is one of the core issues, and that they won't take advantage of strategies, coping mechanisms? How do you get them moving in the right direction?
Sure. And it's interesting because I spoke to the faculty and staff of Lawrence School last week, And one of the teachers stopped afterwards and said, I teach 11th and 12th graders, and for me, I get it, they get it. They're at Lawrence, they're embracing the idea that they need to do things a little bit differently, and even they're pushing away the strategies. The bottom line is that, so teenagers are going to emancipate in their own way. Sometimes it's a really good sign if they say, I don't need that, because if they, my supervisor in grad school used to say the two most annoying ages, toddlerhood and late teens. Thank goodness, or we would never let them go. It is developmentally helpful that you are butting heads with them, so you're like, get out of the house, I don't want, but imagine, right? So, but the reality is that all you can do is present to them what the benefits are of the strategies, present to them in a not so I told you so way, like, yeah, see, this is what would have been helpful. Like if you had your calendar that I showed you about, that online calendar I showed you, if you'd have used that, you wouldn't have missed that exam this morning. Or, pointing out to them in a non-angry, non-judgmental, as matter of fact as you can way what the strategies are and what they're meant to be accommodating. The other thing a lot of times is find out what the running in Speedos is and tell them that this is why this calendar is going to help you, because it will get you to be able to own that motorcycle shop you want to own in 3 years or whatever it is that their goals are. I also would not be afraid to, if your child has been evaluated, have that evaluator sit down with your child and say, yeah, like these are the scores and this is what these 3 letters after my name allow me to tell you that you are having issues with that mom and dad already know you're having issues with, but because I'm a doctor, you're going to listen to me. And sometimes that really helps too. So especially when they're about 12 and older, I make sure that I have some kind of feedback with them that says, you know what, I work with lots of kids and this is what lots of kids have to do. But the reality is it boils down to normalizing the struggle and normalizing the accommodation use. And then modeling for them, like, yeah, I use strategies too. You should see all the reminders in my phone. Or, boy, you should see my calendar, as best as you can. I think we have time for one more?
Yep, I was going to say
Yep,
more.
one more.
Okay. Sorry.
Anybody up there? Sure.
In the teenagers, has there ever been like support groups with the teenagers themselves at work, like where they share, like this is what I do, and maybe even just anonymously, because then they're not labeled, and you know how teenagers go that way.
Right.
But I think that would be really helpful if we
Sure.
could start something like that in some
Sure.
of the schools.
That's a great question. So the question is focusing around having teenagers talking to other teenagers, and that gets at normalizing the struggle. That gets at this idea that strategies are what smart people do, and strategies are the smart way to go about things. So I've not ever heard of any kind of support group or anything like that, in part because the idea is that the reminders have to come in vivo and the what they call external validation. So kids can get together and learn certain strategies, and then they go back to school and it's like they never heard those strategies before. But Lynn Meltzer, who is the author of that first book that I pointed out to you, they do, at the schools that her program is embedded within, and they have some pilot schools and now it's sort of out and available in the community, the kids have strategy labs. And so what the teacher will say is, today we're going to learn about crazy phrases. And so what a crazy phrase is let's say you want to remember the different states of the Midwest. So these are the 6 or 7, whatever they are, states of the Midwest. And so we're going to make up a crazy phrase that takes the first letter of each of those states. So each of you make up a crazy phrase that uses that first letter for each of those states, and then we're going to share them with each other. And then, so once they've been taught this crazy phrase strategy, then they go off in little groups and they make up crazy phrases about other things, and then they share them. And then they turn those in, and they are then to use crazy phrases for the next week for all of their studying. And as they're studying, then they have to write on the front what their crazy phrase was, and then say whether they felt it helped or not. And then when they take a test, the teacher says, what strategies did you try? And they might say crazy phrases, acronyms, and cartoons. How did you think those worked? So there's self-assessment about it. And then through those labs and through that sharing of it, she'll have students bring in, what strategies did you guys use? And the kids come in and they're so proud of the fun strategies that they thought of. But the key with the strategies is they have to be really personal. Like you could give me a crazy phrase that has the name Aaron in it and it wouldn't matter to me, but it could be my student's big brother's name. So they really do have to be personalized and made from the ground up. So I have one more thing I just want to leave you with and then I'm off. You've got to think about big things while you're doing the small things so that all the small things go in the right direction. This is what executive functioning is all about. The little things, little growth, little steps along the way to eventually get the ship where it needs to go. Thank you very much.